Hi, welcome to another edition of Bauer Business Bites. My name is David Tighe, the Managing Director of Bauer Media here in Northern Ireland. And this week's guest is Fintan Duffy, who's the Managing Director of Regen Robotics. Fintan, welcome to Business Bites.
Morning, David. How are you?
Great, thanks. And it's great to see you. Let's get into this week's conversation. So you're in the world of robotics, but that's not where you started. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, Fintan.
No, I suppose far from robotics. I started. I'm an engineer by trade, and I started in the construction industry. And I suppose until construction started drying up in 2007, 2008 time, and I moved into the industrial services sector, which is basically a lot of the services provided into the petrochemical industry and into the pharmaceutical industry for tank cleaning and such things. So basically, the company had a crew of people who traveled around the country and entered into fuel tanks and chemical tanks and all that sort of thing in order to clean them. So different tanks, there's different legal settings for how often a tank needs to be cleaned, but as a rule of thumb, generally every 5 years. In the petrochemical industry, every 5 years a tank needs to be cleaned. So I suppose from that experience of looking at it and sending personnel inside a fuel tank, it's obviously a highly explosive atmosphere. You're going inside the likes of petrol tanks, forecourt storage tanks, all that sort of thing. You're sending guys in there, you're sending them in on their breathing apparatus and chemical suits on them and everything else. And I suppose at that stage, I was looking at it and thinking there has to be a better way of doing this. There has to be a safer way of doing it. And I suppose that's really where this whole journey started. And back in 2012 or 13, I looked into it, and there was no real equipment worldwide. We couldn't find any equipment that could do what I knew needed to be done inside these tanks. So in 2015, I came across a company in Italy, and between the company in Italy and ourselves, we designed what they call zone zero equipment. So equipment to go inside fuel tanks has to be explosion proof. So there has to be no possibility of a spark being emitted from the equipment or anything else. So we went on this journey and we designed the equipment. The robot that you can see behind me here is basically the equipment that we designed. So there's cameras, there's lighting. It carries the suction equipment, which is attached to the ADR tanker outside, and the water jetting equipment for washing inside the tank. So we're very proud to be the first company worldwide to have approval for washing inside zone zero tanks. And wow, that's something that has taken a long time to get it across the line, but we have got there and we have proven it works. And I suppose one of the biggest problems in the industry was actually getting the industry to change. And as the old saying goes, if people are willing to accept change as long as it's exactly the same, and that has been one of the problems for us, but it's something that we have overcome with time.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing story. So, just for the benefit of those people watching who may not be familiar, so it's really like, I suppose, if you imagine driving into the airport, you see a lot of fuel tanks, and it's those kind of tanks that your robotic technology is now cleaning. Well, that's a great story.
So it's the overground storage tanks that you'd see in the airports or in the docks or in fuel refineries, and I suppose we all drive past these tanks at different times, and nobody ever thinks of how they're cleaned, and that's basically what we do. And a lot of people that we'd be talking to in the general public, they never think of these things, and when you start explaining to them that there's people sent inside these tanks in through a 2-foot manway door, it does shock people that type of thing is still going on, and it's still widespread across the industry. So thankfully, we're changing that. And I suppose one thing we did fairly recently, we counted up roughly how many confined space hours we have eliminated. And at the moment, in less than 3 years of operation, we've eliminated over 10,000 hours of confined space entries. So that's a lot of chances of accidents happening that we have eliminated. So it's something we're proud of, and it's something that we're going to keep going with.
Well, that's great. It's a great story. Now, with the fact that you've got robotics involved, there's a lot of talk about how robotics can bring positive change. But there's also, I suppose, the human aspect of robotics, which is jobs. So how would you look at that kind of discussion that that possibly could have been someone's job? So where does that job go now, in your opinion?
Absolutely, and it's something that we regularly come across, that we get a bit of a pushback of saying, well, you're taking jobs from local people, and you're coming in and you're doing this robotics and taking jobs. My argument to that, and it's a fairly simple point, and it's a fairly straightforward point. We're not taking jobs. We're replacing jobs with highly skilled manufacturing jobs. This robotic equipment all has to be manufactured. The ADR tankers have to be manufactured. So as opposed to hazardous jobs inside cleaning tanks, we're changing that to highly skilled manufacturing jobs in a controlled environment inside a manufacturing facility, as opposed to the hazardous job inside an explosive fuel tank.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I don't think we can stop the progress. The robotic technology is here, and it will be applied. And we've seen so much evidence of it already. So this is just another part of that. I suppose two things before we draw to a close. One is the environmental aspect. So obviously, the oil and petrochemical industry, possibly not renowned for being hugely environmentally friendly. So how does your company sit within all that? What steps are you taking to make yourselves good in that area?
Yeah, well, I suppose this was something that it wasn't just the one trick pony, if you want to call it that, of the robotic equipment. We also looked at the environmental impact of our activities, and one of the biggest things we have done in the design of the equipment, we have onboard telemetry on our trucks, which basically records the carbon footprint, if you want, of a tank clean. We also have high pressure, low flow jetting, which we reduce the water used in tank cleaning by about 50 or 60% on average across any project. So it's something that I suppose our customers they're very keen on, the fact that we can tell them exactly how many hours our truck has been running, how many hours the robotic equipment has been running. Having that information, been fit to present that information at the end of each project, is something that a lot of our clients have got very keen with, because it does show that, number one, they're recording it, and number two, they can then, once you can record the information, you can then take steps to reduce your impact even further. So it's not just about safety, as we always say. It's safer, and it's faster, and it's also smarter. And that's the reason it's smarter. We're providing all this information to our customers. We have a login onto the telemetry on our truck, which our customers can log in at any time of the day. They can log in, they can see what the truck's doing, they can see how long it's been running, and they can see how long the project how many hours the project has been running for. So it's something that we find is becoming more popular. I suppose at the start, we did wonder, was it worth the investment in putting this equipment into it, because a lot of it's gone into the oil industry. But it definitely, as we have progressed, it has shown to be worthwhile, because the customers are very keen on having this information.
Yeah. And finally, just as we come to a close, and briefly, you're expanding your service at Regen Robotics this year, aren't you? Tell us very briefly about that.
Absolutely. So I suppose we started off obviously with one set of equipment. We added a second piece of equipment last year, and I suppose the snowball has started rolling now for us. We're doubling in size between this year and the first quarter of next year. We're in the process of building new headquarters. We're adding another 2 systems to our range. We're also adding some new technology to it for floor scanning and things like that. So we're taking on about 8 people this year, 8 more people this year, and we hope to be doing the same by mid next year. We hope to be doubling employment again, and I think the trajectory we're on at the moment, that's what it's showing.
Well, Fintan, it's a great story, and I've really enjoyed hearing about the journey of you and all the team at Regen Robotics. And we all wish you the very best in the future with your expansion and the work that you're doing. Thanks so much for being our guest this morning.
Brilliant. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.